what you wear is your brand expert, but what I know is we're constantly reinforcing our brand through the experience we provide for people.
We know AI is in the mix, but don't you want people to look for you by brand? Instead of getting lost in a sea of knowledge trying to find information.
The story they're making up in their head about why they're not willing to do the things to be more visible and to attract more attention.
All right, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figure podcast. So we live in such a noisy world, and trying to get attention is difficult. You know, we put out content, we create thought leadership, we write on LinkedIn, we might podcast, we might do some Instagram, we might send out emails. One of the more frustrating things is you say you do all that, then you get crickets and you start to wonder, is it all worth it? What's going on? Why does it seem like other people seem to be doing it, but I'm just not doing it? My stuff is so much better than their stuff, but I'm getting ignored, but other people are getting, and if you've ever experienced that or gone down that road, you know how frustrating that can be. There really is. There's a formula, there's a trick to being, well, as our guest likes to talk about, unignorable. And so that's why I wanted to bring her on today's podcast. It's really about how impact-driven leaders can become that unignorable type person, right? And so we're going to talk about messaging. We're going to talk about visibility and all that other jazz. Without further ado, Melanie Benson, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to deep diving into this with you. And so it's such a rich and unique time in our industry with the AI and all of the stuff. It's never been a more important time to really find your little key messaging to stand out.
So when you said with AI, right, it's never been more
Mhm.
important because of AI. Expand on that a little bit. How is AI interfering with somebody's ability to stand out?
Well, the way I see AI playing into things, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of AI. I think it's a great tool. But I think what's happening is there's a mass transition to AIfying everything.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people who aren't maybe really comfortable with their messaging, they're maybe turning to AI, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you want to call it, whatever tool you use. And they're finding that they're over relying on AI to generate content, to find and unlock their messaging to help them stand out.
Yeah.
But now everything's starting to sound the same.
Yeah.
And instead of really finding that positioning that makes you unignorable, you're just starting to sound like everything else that's out there. And it's just noise. You said that earlier. It's like it's noisy. We're just creating more noise right now if you're over relying on tools like that.
And it's doing people a grave disservice when it comes to the visibility as well, because they'll use AI to say, hey, write me a LinkedIn post on the topic of such and such. And then AI will turn around and create that topic. But that topic is just pulled from a general base of research and information. It doesn't include your frameworks, your perspective, your take on things. And so it really becomes more slop, and it's easy to get ignored. You can still use AI to write these articles, but give it more context so that you're the only one that can say what was just said, not just repeating and copy and pasting what anybody could say for that matter.
Well, I think you just kind of leaned into something that I think is the key to all of this. And, I've been in business since 2000. Really struggled to find my footing for a long time. I had zero clarity about who I was, what I should be known for. And what emerged for me down the road was this gift of helping people craft messaging that helps them become unignorable, right? But if we look at what causes people to blend in, to not use their tools properly, to create messaging that just blends into the noise, I think part of it is a lot of people, they're so used to doing what they do, they don't know how to step back out and look at it from the 10,000 view and say, "What am I known for?
Mhm.
And how is this known for statement, this known for concept really translating into the eyes and ears of the person experiencing me for the very first time?"
Yeah.
And even if somebody has known me for a while, and I see this all the time, I'm sure you do too. If you're pivoting, you're evolving, you're shifting your work, your leadership is transforming, are you keeping people up to speed with what you should be known for now?
All right. So here's a question for you. You've listened to a few of my podcasts and, all that other jazz. Am I unignorable?
Well, I think you have a few key things that make you very unignorable. First of all, you have a really clear messaging statement, and you have something that I think is really compelling. I get a lot of people that come to me and say, "Melanie, I have had this podcast for a year, and yeah, it's not really doing anything for me. It's become a hobby that's not, it's a very expensive hobby." And what I really believe one of the key factors you have going for you in that unignorable quality is you have a very clear why statement, why energy in your podcast name.
Mm,
Okay. And then secondly, and what I picked up when I was listening to some of your shows is that you also secondarily have a very clear why me. Like you are very clear your values, what you're about. It's pulled through in the channels and the pillars that you talk about on the
mm,
show. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss. And let's just face it, we're all highly creative beings. We have a million things we want to talk about. I don't know about you, Charles, but I have a lot of secret super strengths, right? Like
yeah.
there's a lot of things I can do. But when we want to really position our brand, our work, and maybe even you as a thought leader or a leader of the work that you do, you need to consider how is that translating into the way in which our brand is represented.
Mm,
So your podcast works, you as the brand work, your content pillars are really clear, and you have like a really beautiful brand presence. Like the brand presence is seems to me to be very congruent with who you want to attract and the work that you do. So we're just hitting the top level of unignorable factors, but that's what jumped out at me right away. So you see, I did do my homework.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It was interesting. A gentleman named Mason Bendewald. Mason is the one that put P90X on the map.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
for years, I used to I used to dress in button up collared shirt and I would put a sport coat on. And that's the way I would show up for calls. And then I had this call with Mason coming, and for whatever reason, I just wasn't feeling like getting all buttoned up and whatnot. And I'm like, you know what? Ah, I'm just gonna show up in a t-shirt. And I show up in a t-shirt, and Mason was like, "Oh, dude, love the presence." And I wasn't asking for this. And I'm going, what are we talking about here? And he goes, I thought you were going to be one of those coaches that showed up in a button down shirt and like sport coat. It's nice to see that you're not that person. And I'm sitting there going, little did he know that this is by accident. And I'm like, elaborate, man. Tell me, I'm learning from you. Tell me a little bit more. And he's like, the tattoos, the t-shirt, that it's authentic. And I really feel that that's probably why you are as successful as you are. You have that, it's that authentic, nonverbal communication that's just coming across and it really resonates well with me and keep leaning in and blah, blah, blah. And then I confess to him, I'm like, this is by accident, man. But it was because of that one conversation, I never went back to the button downs and the jackets because this is much more me. How much of what you do is both the verbal communication of being unignorable as well as the verbal communication of being unignorable?
Well, I'm going to actually add a third element to that because, yeah, some of it is the physical presence, right? It's like having a congruent brand. I'm not what you wear is your brand expert, but what I know is we're constantly reinforcing our brand through the experience we provide for people. So, for those of you listening and not watching, Charles has a t-shirt on, yes, but it's also got a clear message on it, entrepreneur, founder, CEO. So that brand energy is still congruent and that, you're bringing forward the message. I don't know if that was on purpose or if that's your standard t-shirt or
I
if,
wore one of two T-shirts, this one and another one
okay,
that says results 7 days a week.
perfect. So yeah, that part is intentional. And when I was early on in my career, I spoke at a lot of events. And one of the things that I noticed is how you enter a room is either making you invisible or making you stand out. Now, a lot of people aren't really comfortable standing out, right? Like, we're going to talk about that in a minute because I think sometimes we oftentimes have a negative narrative about being seen, right? And that does play into our unignorable qualities. But I did notice when I could bring out my confidence and my bold energy, and I would show up in these rooms as if I was, as they say in the entertainment industry, top of the call sheet, right? Like, you bring a certain cadence and energy into that room. And when you bring your confidence into your message, when you bring your best, highest vibe into a conversation like we're having right now, or when you're on stage, or when you're delivering your own podcast, or you're speaking to your team, you're meeting with a new client, that is what people experience. That is the resonance factor that makes people connect or disconnect.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people don't understand how important dropping into assuredness is in how you bring your brand into that unignorable experience.
Interesting. And yeah, I remember many years ago, I liked being sort of like the secret weapon. Like
Yeah.
I didn't really, it made me uncomfortable to have any sort of spotlight. Like I was like playing small, so to speak. Like I just loved being the guy behind the guys. Like that was just like what I liked to do. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was an insecurity, and my gut is telling me maybe it was the fear of public failure. Like, if for whatever reason it didn't work out, then, then nobody would know, right? So it is what it is. Maybe, who knows? But then somebody said to me, they really encouraged me to lean in and just own my presence. And when I pushed back, he goes, "Well, I guess you just don't like money." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" It's like, "I guess you just don't like money," because the reality is you need the attention. You need the attention. If you want to attract high value clients, if you want to grow the business, you want to build a business, you need the attention. And don't tell me you don't know this stuff because you tell your clients the same damn thing. I'm just throwing it back in your face. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ah." So then I made myself uncomfortable to finally be allowing myself to be out there. And now people think I like the spotlight or I strive for it. It still makes me uncomfortable to some degree, but it's like, but I know it actually benefits now. Like I know why I had to do it.
Hmm. I love that story. So here's a secret that not many people know about me is I'm really shy. You see me speak on stage, you would never get it. If you meet me, you never get it. You look at my brand on LinkedIn or my website, or you listen to my podcast, right? Any of it, you would not get that I'm really shy, but I am. And stepping into the spotlight was, as I should say, very, very difficult for me. I had to overcome a lot of internal conflict. I had to kinda unpack some shame stuff that was residue from the past. I've had to look at, like, how do I show up so that I feel congruent and confident so that the energy that I put forward is authentic, as we were talking about before, but also impactful.
Yeah.
Because when I started my business, I had no flipping idea what I was doing.
Do any of
I was
us?
fumbling around in the dark. I'm like, "Okay, let me try this, let me try that." Like, what message? Like, who do I work with? I don't know. Like, I was literally just show up and figure it out. And as much as we need that courage and that bravado, when you don't have that click factor yet, you don't have that drop into, "This is what I'm here to do," and you don't have your frameworks, you don't have your messaging, you don't have your brand energy really identified and congruent, it's really easy to kind of slide into invisibility. So I work with a lot of women, and I'm not saying this only happens to women because you just shared how this was for you, but there are a lot of women who haven't embraced their power. They haven't embraced their work. They haven't really dropped in and said, "This is what I'm here to do. And I'm gonna let that light shine really, really bright because that's what is going to pull people in. That's what's going to help my brand amplify." But when I dig in with them, Charles, what's so interesting is why the story they're making up in their head about why they're not willing to do the things to be more visible and to attract more attention. And you know what the number one is? I want to see if you can guess what the number
The
one
number
is.
one where they don't want the attention,
Yeah, like why they aren't stepping into being more visible.
probably because they want somebody else to get the attention. Maybe.
Good guess.
Yeah, they want someone else to get the attention. The other one would be embarrassment.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a common one.
or feeling like they don't know enough. Like,
Definitely a big one. Not the number one though.
wow, probably not. I mean, it has nothing to do with physical appearance, does it?
No, not usually, but it has crept up. Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, now I'm curious.
So the number one reason why, in my experience, women don't step into the spotlight and they hold themselves back and play small is because there is a narrative that they're not ready for more success. Either they don't feel like they have the capacity, they believe that it will erode something else that's important to them, that it'll like steal the time away. They don't feel ready. There's some kind of internal conflict about having more. I was speaking at an event a few years ago and I was talking more about mindset at this event. But one of the ladies, she was on the edge of breaking seven figures and she was like, I am holding myself back and I know it. And we did a little work on it in the room. And literally it was like, I don't have the mindset and the belief that I can be a seven-figure plus earner
Yeah.
and continue to have time for my family. And that's just one example, but it's really like we create these internal barriers and blocks in our own mind because we don't see how to be visible in a way that is either authentic, congruent, or that can be aligned with the capacity we believe we have to take our business to that next level.
And, I've heard that quite a few times. Anytime I've tried to encourage a founder to really get out there and claim the founder's brand, they go, "Well, I don't really have anything new to say. I don't have anything interesting." And and there's all these limiting beliefs. But, you know, there's many reasons why I wanted you on this podcast today. But one of the reasons is that if you have a business today, it's really, really important to have a founder's brand. And maybe for the different reasons than what most people think. And the thing is if you look at companies like you look at, let's say, State Farm, right? Jake from State Farm has more followers than State Farm itself, and Jake is a fictional character, right? You look at, well, maybe now, even before he stepped into the political realm, like Elon Musk had more followers than all of his companies all put together. And that's the same thing that goes all across the board. The founder itself generally has more followers than the company that supports them. That's because people by nature will go to the founder and they'll look for the founder for thought leadership. And then when they're ready to do business with the company itself, then they'll gravitate and they'll follow the business. So then we ended up doing some research and some studying because that's what we do. We grow companies for a living, right? So we said, well, what would happen if we take the exact same funnel and we run it through the founder's brand and we run it through the business brand? What ends up happening? Well, what happens is through the founder's brand, you end up generating significantly more leads at a lower cost through the founder's brand than the business brand, running the exact same funnel, just one through the founder's brand and then one through the business brand. And then, but what was also interesting is when you run the founder's brand and the business brand simultaneously, you don't get a 1 + 1 = 2 benefit. You would actually get an exponential benefit on both. It's more than this, but it's a bare bones minimum 1.33 times 1.33 equals whatever, right? So it's significantly more for anybody who's listening that goes, well, what is one way that I can then grow my business in 2026 and beyond? It's like, well, repurpose some of the content you're already creating for your business and put it under your personal brands and then build that up. And then if you want to go one more step further, build up some of the people in your company, not just yourself, build up some other people in your company as well and help spread that. So your work with founders and building the founders brand, if you were to say, okay, here's a framework right now that I want you to pay attention to. And if you're going to say, write this down, here's the framework to build a founders brand. You need to have this stuff, you know, nailed down. What would that be?
I think beyond just the basics of graphic and, the image of the business itself, I think the founder needs to know, what do I stand for? What do I want people to know about what we deliver? So I work with a lot of service businesses, but this also translates to product businesses. It's like, what is the framework, the outcome, the promise that we want our clients to have when they experience our business product? And so if you are like, I work with a woman who's a multi-million dollar consultant. She specializes in working with other consultants. And one of her big promises is how they are going to reach multiple six-figure months.
Hmm.
And so when she has the business, but then when she is the brand herself, how do we make sure that people understand that concept, that possibility, that brand promise? I think the third thing is, what sets you apart from everyone else?
Hmm.
We deal with, a lot of businesses who have competition. They have a lot of similar choices that the client can go to. So why should they choose you over someone else? That drills down into values. Are you letting people know what your values are? If you go back a few years, we look at Whole Foods and John Mackey, I believe is his name. He got really clear what is the values of the Whole Foods brand. And it wasn't just Whole Foods. He started to let people get to know who he was. He wrote a book. He became brought his thought leadership forward. He let people know what his beliefs were that were driving the Whole Foods brand. And I think that's a great example of the last piece of this is, what channels, what vehicles are you gonna use to let your message and the why you get known outside of the business? Is there a book in you? Do you maybe feel inspired to have a podcast? Should you be a guest on other podcasts? Maybe there's a TEDx in you in terms of, you have a certain leadership style or a certain philosophy or value system that people resonate with. How can you bring that to life beyond the walls of the business? And as I was talking, Charles, I was thinking about, I'm curious, in your experience, how many of your founders find the safety of hiding behind the business they founded instead of letting themselves be seen as the leader and have their own brand?
Well, most of them are more comfortable hiding behind it. And then
Yeah.
it's actually through working together that usually they begin to start publishing. And then when they do, they start generating more leads. And then it becomes, wait a minute, this worked. How do we do more of what's working? Right.
Right.
What I also found though is in terms of the content, there needs to be a few things that absolutely have to be true. Number one, you have to deliver a new and fresh perspective. So new and fresh perspective is essential. The other one is be controversial to popular opinion. And and if you can, more controversial you are, generally you stand out more if you're controversial.
Mhm.
And I remember several years ago, actually back in 2005. So between my wife and I, we invested over $250,000 to travel the world with Tony Robbins. And, talking with Tony, at this point, I had already built a couple different businesses. And I said to Tony, I'm like, oh, I just want to be liked. And he was like, well, you're never going to make it big if you are just trying to be liked all the time. And I'm like, wait, I thought you would be telling me something different. Like, it's okay, be liked. And, here's how you be more likable. And, here's how to win more friends. And all this other stuff. Like, I thought like I'd get that out of you. And he's like, he says, in fact, what you'll find is that the more successful you become, the more you're going to turn people away. He said, if you look at me, he goes, about 50% of the world loves me, 50% of the world absolutely hates me. I have to be okay with that. And he goes, if you look at things, if half the world doesn't like you, you're probably doing really, really well. Because if you're in the middle, you're going to be forgotten. But if you're in one of the extremes, you're actually going to be remembered. And so find your extreme on what it is and be remembered. Now, I don't say things. I'm not like, Donald Trump that will say things that will like intentionally, push people away. That just is inauthentic to my style of communication. But those of you who know me know that I'm not a big fan of fast growth. I'm not a big fan. I'm a fan of predictable growth. You can grow fast predictably, but not grow at all costs. I'm not a big fan of growth hacks. I believe you get paid in direct proportion to the value that you bring others. I believe in systems. I help people get out of the founder's trap. I don't pretend that I'm superhuman, even though I try every day to be superhuman. I actually think part of what makes me who I am is that I can teach from the scars more than the trophies, right? Because I've been doing this for a while. And so it's like part of that is going to resonate well with people. And it's usually the seasoned people who've they've had enough businesses, they have enough experience. I resonate with the experienced entrepreneurs and the founders. I do
Mhm.
not resonate well with the startups. I do not resonate with the high adrenaline growth junkie type folks. I don't resonate with those folks.
Yep, makes sense.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it totally does. This is I don't know if you've ever explored the human design tool on your show before, but one of the tools that I find really helpful is everybody has kind of their unique blueprint of how bold they're meant to be and how their content is going to best resonate, how their messaging is going to not just, like, stand out, but act like a light tractor beam that pulls them in,
Mhm.
and a lot of it can be unlocked and activated by understanding how you're designed. So, what you're explaining, what works for you, but then there are other people where that would be so boring, right? Like, that would be like, they're like, "Okay, put me in a put me in a jail, like, I would just die a slow death if I was that way." And by understanding what your unique energies are and unlocking them, that's when your messaging really starts to not just land and resonate, but also convert people and turn them into loyal fans. So, one of the things you were just also explaining is what gets really fascinating to me is how you use your brand positioning to, like, repel and attract. And I believe that it's not just about, like, being controversial. It's about really knowing what you stand for and being so clear about that in your messaging and not being afraid to not be popular, not be the coolest person, but to do the thing that you are here to do and works and be so in on it and own the conversation.
Yeah.
Be the person everyone knows for that thing. And to me, that's what brings a brand alive. And you're going to be super attractive to the people that go, yes, that's what I need. And the people that aren't going to be your ideal clients are going to be like, yeah, that's not my thing. And they're going to kind of self select out.
It's interesting that you say that. So I've had meetings recently with a few billion-dollar companies and billionaires in general. And, being in this area, you tend to, in Palm Beach, you tend to come across them a lot easier than in other areas, right? But I've had these conversations and they're surrounded by people that just agree with them all the time. And
Mhm.
maybe it's a fatal flaw sometimes because I don't have a problem telling people when I feel like they're going in the wrong direction. But, I'm having these conversations with these, billion-dollar CEOs, and I'm like, okay, I understand why you might have thought that was right, but the reality is that this is the way that the new buyer buys, and this is what has to happen. So that strategy is that ended up, falling flat as of 2024. The new strategy is different, and the amount of times that they have stopped and said, "There's not a single person in this company that has said what you just told me right now," but has brought me into the boardroom and skipped all other layers of management. And I think there's that certain level of like, if you know deep down that what you're doing is right, then it's like, say what is right, because just don't do it because you think you're going to get a client. And actually, if I thought, oh man, I really want them as a client, I'm just going to agree with them and be happy. I probably would have met with some marketing manager or some lower level person or whatnot, or maybe not even had a meeting at all.
Mhm.
And you're right. You know who does a really good job at this is Cody Sanchez. Are you familiar with her?
I know her name, yeah, I don't know her work very well.
Cody, she talks about buying boring businesses, and she's wonderful. She's brilliant. She's just a great person, all in all. But one of the things that Cody does is she's very edgy, right? And she'll talk about how she buys boring businesses, and she talks about the relationship with her husband, and how one of the best decisions that she's ever made was finding the right partner. And to many people, you look at it and you go, "How is that controversial?" But actually, in her market, there are plenty of women that are like, "You don't need a man. You like, what are you talking about? Like, you can be completely self-made and don't do this." And she's like, "No, like, I this is the way I do it. I need a supportive partner. I need
Yeah.
somebody who has my back. I need somebody that's going to tell me to push me and to tell me when I'm wrong." And that's so it's like, it's little things like that, little big or whatever things like that, but it's part of her message. She's got millions of followers.
I really feel like at the level that we're talking about, when we're at this stage of first of all, our evolution of our business growth, of who we are as leaders, it's the tiny refinements of becoming more and more aligned with your most authentic power and your presence that make you have greater momentum faster.
Yeah.
You said earlier that part of you that wanted to be liked, and we talked about that, like, making the safe choices. One of the things when you're an unignorable leader, you understand the difference between a safe choice and a choice that has to be made that propels not just your brand forward, but the impact you're having on the people that you're here to work with or
Yeah.
influence. And when you I call them energy leaks. When you have this shadow that drives your decisions under the guise of like, I want to be liked, or I want to be the popular one, or whatever it is, we create these little energy leaks in our messaging, in our brand, and in our whatever marketing and visibility strategies we're using. And you can be pouring tons of dollars into it that should work and they won't,
Yeah.
because you're playing the safe game and you've let what your shadow needs, what that comfort needs to win, instead of doing the thing that will actually line you up with what you're most here to do, but also the greatest impact you can have and making the best money in the process.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And this conversation is so important because with AI, and especially if you look at, for anybody that thinks my business is immune to AI, everybody's business has been disrupted. And the easiest way to prove it is just through the buyer's journey. If you just look at your web traffic between January and now, your organic web traffic has gone down by 60%. So it's because it's defaulting to AI overviews right now. And then there's some other changes that are going to be coming up, which is also going to impact that even further. So we know things are being disrupted. We know AI is in the mix, but don't you want people to look for you by brand? Instead of getting lost in a sea of knowledge trying to find information, wouldn't you want people to look for Melanie Benson? Wouldn't you want people to look for your name? Wouldn't you want people to be up? I wonder what he has to say. I wonder what she has to say. And then you create this captive audience by going, oh, resonates so well. I'm going to subscribe to their podcast. This resonates so well. I'm going to subscribe to their YouTube channel. I'm going to follow them on LinkedIn. I'm going to follow them on Instagram. And I want, it resonates. It sits well. I want to hear more. And as you
Yeah.
create that, see, we're competing for attention with AI as well, right? We don't want to be lost in generalized information. We want to create an audience and hold on to this audience. And just like any type of conversation, if you've been to a dinner party and you're having a conversation at the dinner party, the moment it no longer becomes relevant, you start looking for a way out of the conversation.
Yeah. I've been in those.
Right? So we have to look at it and be like, how do we maintain the conversation? And that's by having an obsession with who you're talking to, an obsession with what are the pains, an obsession with what are their desires and their aspirations and their hopes and their dreams. But it's also, and this is going to be hard for a lot of people, but, and this is what I found, is that you have to be willing to take your masks off.
Mm.
You have to be willing to say, you know what? I'm not perfect. You know what? I've made mistakes. You know what? I've failed and I'm gonna fail again. And it's those moments when you can take the masks off and you can speak to the person that they go, you know what? I'm here. I want to hear more. But if you do everything, but you miss a few steps, if you keep the masks on and you're like, I'm just so, I don't want people to think that, you know, that I've failed. I don't want people to think that I've struggled. I did a post, Melanie, on Facebook this week. And it's the first time I've written about this, but I felt it was important because of a couple client calls that I had throughout the day. And I said, I read an article that 75% of entrepreneurs experience a mental health issue. And I was like, if you had asked me that 20 years ago, I would have told you it was never me. But entrepreneurship is not a straight line. It has its ups and downs. And there's been deep down points where I've experienced it myself. This overwhelming amounts of stress and the anxiety can really run a toll on an entrepreneur. And I talked about them not being alone. That one post within 12 hours drove 5 calls.
Yep.
Immediately. I didn't talk about strategy. I didn't talk about how to grow the company and how to make more money and how to do this and that. I said, you know what? I'm just going to talk to the human. But that was enough for people to be like, what would it be like to work with this person?
Yeah.
Isn't that?
It's exactly what I experienced. I went through a really, really traumatizing 2009, 2010. I was not equipped for everything in my business that worked really well, that propelled me over 7 figures to stop working literally over like 3 months. So I was not prepared for that. I did not navigate that well. And I had to make a lot of changes very quickly. And emotionally, I was not, and like capacity wise, like I didn't navigate it well at all. It took me a while to recover. And I was really in a very low energetic space after that for a while. But sharing about that and writing about that and letting people know they were not alone. They were not the only ones that made epically bad decisions in their business that they had to recover from was also a bonding space. Now, there were times where I'm like, did I share too much? I had vulnerability shame, as Brene Brown likes to call it. But the impact of people knowing that I was real was far greater than any loss. Now, I actually just aired a couple episodes on my podcast, and one of them was about some really epically frustrating situations that I let go on too long in my business this year and what I did differently. Can I just tell you how many texts, how many DMs, how many episodes shared? I was nervous to put it out. I'm like, too much?
Yeah, right.
No, this is what people they believe if you can navigate it and you can talk about it, they're not going to feel like they're a failure or they're epically losing. Like they can trust somebody because you've built tools to move through
Yeah.
things. So like one of my first mentors, Thomas Leonard, who is the founder of Coach University, always used to say, like, if you can be 10 steps ahead of your clients, if you can be 10 steps ahead of the people you lead, that's where some of that trusted advisor can come from.
Yeah.
You don't have to have it all figured out.
Heck, sometimes it's only one step, right?
Yeah, right?
Especially nowadays, things are moving so fast. One step is actually pretty significant.
Exactly. Or we'll just do it together.
Yeah, right.
I just have different tools that
Yeah.
I can ask different questions and I can access different resources and we can partner in the solution rather than one person has to have it all figured out.
So I know we're pushing up against the clock. One of the questions that I like to also ask my guests is, if there was one question that I could answer for you about your business, what would that one question be that I could answer for you?
What was one question? Oh, wow. Okay. So I don't rarely not have anything off the cuff, but let me think about this for a second. Well, if we're going to go into the founder energy, well, and what we're dealing with in this really interesting time with everything changing so quickly and the innovation of AI, what's the one thing that my coaching and consulting business should be doing to move clients into high ticket offers faster? How's that?
Excellent. I love that question. So we have a strategy which we call the gateway sales solution, right? So what that means is that typically what happens is when somebody is looking at you, they're looking at you and other situations and so forth and other potential vendors. And you're saying, look, I want you to come in and then I want a commitment, and that commitment might be 10,000 or whatever that might be, right? Whatever it is that you're charging. And so for somebody that's new and they don't know you that well, like that's a big promise. And so it makes me uncomfortable, and I have to really kind of psych myself up and really feel like I've done all my research and everything else in order to jump in 2 feet and say, you know what? And a wish and a prayer. I hope this works out. Yes, I'm all in. Let's do it. And that's typically how a lot of sales end up going in. And so we created this gateway. And the way that gateway works is it's like, look, if you look at the journey of when somebody starts working with you all the way through the ultimate outcome, what is the first real win that they ultimately are able to achieve? What is the first real win? Carve that little piece out and put a price tag on that. That's usually anywhere between 10 and 20% of the entire value of the contract. So we've done this with software developers and agencies and everything. And that might be like, well, it's a $50,000 contract, but we'll do the gateway at about 5,000. And so you sell that first win and you say, look, over the course of the next 90 days or 30 days, rather, it's usually smaller period, 6 weeks, 30 days, we're going to work together and we're going to get you this. And that's going to help you achieve this particular outcome. And look, here's the deal. It's only going to be X amount of dollars, which is a small fraction. If for whatever reason, at the end of that experience, if you can't look me in the eyes and tell me this is the best investment of time and money that you could have made in trying to solve this problem, let me know and I'll give you all your money back. Now, we've just done two things. We've said we've reduced the level of commitment, the financial commitment, making it really much more affordable. We've reduced the risk, and it's actually reversed risk because now I'm taking on more risk because I'm willing to say if it's not the best investment time money, I'll give you all your money back. And I've shut out the competition because now they're comparing you against all the competition. They're like, well, why would I say no to this? Because you're willing to take on the risk. You're willing to do it at a significant discount or, reduce price for me to at least test this. And then if I like it, I'm going to continue. So the close rates are more than doubled we see our clients go through this. They more than double the close rates. And then on average, anywhere between 60 something percent to 86% of those people continue into the ongoing. And almost nobody asks for a refund. And the reason why almost nobody asks for a refund is during that initial gateway, it's relationships plus results equal retention. It's not just results. If it's results equals retention, that's a transaction. You have to be able to add the relationship in there. Throughout that gateway, you want to build that relationship with the client. You would have several different interactions and phone calls, build that relationship, and you're going to continue to build that relationship and go on. And that relationship is important because nobody wants to ask for a refund from their friends. They don't want to be like, this has been great. I love you so much. Can I have my money back? Like that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. And you also, you're telling them you're good at your work because as long as you deliver a win and they're happy, they're going to continue. That gateway has been phenomenal for shortening sales cycles and then increasing those conversions. They're awesome. Highly recommended. Without, we have a whole bunch of different strategies. They all have differing results and whatnot. This is one of the strategies that 100% of the time, and I can't think of one exception in the past 16 years, they've all had positive outcomes. I don't know of one client that's never had a positive lift in conversions that has done this. In fact, I almost find it irresponsible not to do a gateway once you've tested it, once you use it, because it is going to create that much of a lift. Does that help?
Yeah. I mean, it tells me I was on the right track because we were doing something almost there, but that's great. Thank you.
I love it. Now back to you. This is the Beyond Seven Figures
Mhm.
podcast. What would you say is your number one biggest, best tip for our listeners who want to take their business beyond seven figures?
Get known for something and amplify it. Be willing to be unignorable with your message, with being known for something and making a stand for the very thing that your clients need to know about you so that resonance pulls them in.
I love it. Fantastic. We've talked a lot about being unignorable and the different things from both physical appearance to your message, your word, and all that other stuff. You talked about having a gift. You asked if you could give a gift
Mm.
to the audience, and what is that gift and where can they find it?
Yeah, so I have a guide that helps people walk through 7 key pieces of being an unignorable brand in your business and how to prioritize the ones that are going to actually propel your business brand forward the fastest. And if you go to melaniebenson.com/beyond 7 figures, you can download it as my gift to you. There's a little scorecard that goes with it that I find really, really helpful. Just so you can quickly review them and go, yep, this is the one that I'm going to put into action first because it's going to propel us forward.
Excellent. So it's Melanie Benson. So Melanie Benson, Benson, then slash
.com
beyond
forward slash.
.com, beyond seven, the number seven,
Yep. The number
beyond
7
seven figures.
figures.
And there you go. So
Yeah.
MelanieBenson.com / beyond seven figures. And then you can get that gift. Fantastic. You
Yeah.
can also follow her on LinkedIn as well, Melanie Benson, and then check her out over at MelanieBenson.com too.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. What a great conversation. And I would love to hear from you as you're listening in. What was your big aha from Charles and our conversation today? Give us a little shout out wherever you like to listen to podcasts.
very cool. Love that. Love that. And then for our listeners, as a reminder, if you're looking for more strategies and tips to grow your business faster, more predictably, and then less dependent on you, help you get yourself out of that founder's trap, check us out over at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gannett with my new friend, Melanie Benson, and I will see you in another episode.